Today's episode is brought to you by LaRosse Media. They make professional videos to fit any budget, so next time you need a commercial, promo, or corporate video, think LaRosse. Check them out at larossemedia.com. Hello and welcome to the Stinking Albatross Podcast. My name is Alissa Globe, and I'm here once again with my co-host, Scott Hayward.
Hi, Alissa. How's it going today?
It's going well, Scott. And today we have a special guest, something different for you this week. We have Jordan Guildford, who is the founder of Gems for Gems. So welcome, Jordan.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an honor, and I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jordan Guildford, like I mentioned, is the founder of Gems for Gems, a not-for-profit that's committed to ending the cycle of domestic abuse by focusing on economic recovery and empowerment of survivors. Her organization has reached over 14,000 women across Canada with her annual jewelry drive. They run workshops that teach domestic abuse victims about financial literacy, self-defense, resilience training, psychological coping skills, and more. She was named Avenue Magazine's Top 40 Under 40 in Calgary in 2019. So we're really excited to have you, Jordan. Now, I met you, everything's a blur when you have a baby. I want to say like a month ago, but I know it was more than that.
It was, I think it was 8 months ago, okay. but that makes total sense.
Yeah. So, I met Jordan at an MP's office. He invited a small group to come listen to Jordan speak along with some other people on her board because along with Gems for Gems, they've embarked on a new initiative called Hopes Cradle. And I'm sure many of our listeners know about these types of drop boxes that women can use when they're in desperate situations to put their baby inside if they have no other place to go or no other resources available to them. Usually they're located in hospitals or at fire stations, and it's a much better, safer, obviously much more optimistic place than a dumpster or a parking lot, or oftentimes places where you see it on the news. I read a little bit about your story about how you started Gems for Gems online, and I thought it was really powerful, but I wanted to hear you explain it in your own words. So why did you start this organization?
There's kind of two answers to that. The most readily available publicly one is the jewelry drive. And actually, prior to you coming on here, I was shoving jewelry out of the way because we're in full swing for our jewelry drive. And basically, when I moved here in 2015 to Calgary, I was absolutely blown away by enormous amount of initiatives for children at Christmas time. And I thought it was beautiful. And there's just so many more resources here in comparison to Nova Scotia. But I was raised in pretty extreme poverty. We didn't know, we didn't always have food, heat, hot water. All of it wasn't always readily available to us. So when I saw all of this, I asked the group of women that I was chatting with if there was anything for the mothers, because I saw my mother do everything that she possibly could to create magic for us when she had nothing. And they all just kind of looked at me because that concept hadn't come on their radar, just again, because there was just much more, many more resources here, period. And the focus was a little bit different. Anyway, I told him the story about when I was 14 years old. I started seeing my mom a little differently. I started being interested in boys, and my dad wasn't around at all. So I started seeing my mom as a woman rather than just a caregiver and all of that. So I started recognizing she didn't have anyone holding her hand or any of the things I was excited about at the time. So I spoke to my brother and my sister, and I asked them if they would be willing to put our money together that Christmas to give mom something special. So my gran would always give us $40 at Christmas time to be able to buy our whole family gifts. And it was awesome. It sounds super menial, but we loved it. We would go to the church bazaar and we would buy each other knitted toques and mittens. And we always knew who did it. And we got excited for what design. I know it sounds very menial, but for us, it was all we knew. And it was great. But this year we put our money all together and we bought mom a little bracelet, and it looked like leaves woven together, and it had what we thought were diamonds, but most definitely plastic. And it was just pretty and sparkly. And we were so excited to give it to her on Christmas morning. But when she opened it, she just started bawling and left the room. And we were mortified, absolutely mortified. But when she came back, she had done her hair and her makeup and put on her best clothes. And she just sat us down and told us that this little piece of jewelry had put her back on her own radar. She was so fixated on being a life source to us that she had lost sight of herself as a woman and even as an individual. And so that night I told the ladies that story, and I decided to try to do that for as many women as I possibly could. At that Christmas, there was a shelter close to me that had 22 women in it. So I had a goal of being able to collect little packets of jewelry. I decided 3 to 5 items so that they could mix and match. Mm-hmm. And that was my goal. And I had 3 weeks to do it. Everyone said no as far as helping me collect. I tried the Y, I tried all kinds of different locations, and everyone kept saying liability. And it was so frustrating. But then Orange Theory Fitness in Seton agreed so happily. And yeah, and in 3 weeks, we were able to collect enough for 436 women, which like blew me away. Yeah. And I need to update my website. We're actually now 18,000 gifts across Canada on Christmas morning to women in shelters. So that's one side, was my mom. And then the reason why I chose shelters is because I have sadly a fair bit of abuse in my childhood as well. So I kind of married the poverty and the abuse together. And that's why I chose domestic abuse survivors. So
amazing.
Yeah, that's where it all started.
Yeah.
I did not expect it to be what it has become at all. But more and more people just kept coming on board, and it made it possible for us to really make a large impact collectively.
Mm-hmm. You know, Jordan, telling us about your story with your growing up with your siblings and going to the church bazaar and spending the $40 that your grandmother they're giving you, you know, to you, and I doubt to others, to you might think it sounds menial or might sound menial to other people, but I got to tell you, like, just from hearing that for the first time, it sounds like a lot better than I think a lot of other Christmases that a lot of people have out there, because it's just that much more meaningful. And so I don't think it's menial at all. But in terms of Gems for Gems, could you please kind of expand to us about how, specifically with Hopes Cradle, kind of what prompted you to get into that and making that as part of your initiative with or as an initiative with Gems for Gems?
Sure. So a few different things kind of led to us taking this on as an initiative, but the main driving factor is that our board chair is homicide detective Dave Sweet. And for him, obviously, when he finds the babies, it's because it's a homicide. So he was very troubled by this, obviously. And then there had been more in the news too, as far as in other areas of Canada and in the States. And it was bothering me. I hadn't mentioned it to Dave. And then a 2018 case resurfaced, and they were trying the mother in this particular circumstance. So he came to me and he asked if there's anything we could do about it. And I had already been doing my research and everything independently. And I said, absolutely. So we put it in front of the board, and immediately everyone said yes. So then it was a 2-year rolling up of the sleeves to try to get it across the board. We first tried to do it with AHS, but then actually the worst timing in history, because as soon as we started trying, COVID hit, and they just didn't have the capacity to be able to take on something else. So that's when we, tried, and then another 2 babies were found. And I was like, we can't wait anymore. We know what we want to do. And now every baby that happens I feel it's more on us than it was before, because we have a solution to be able to provide. And then I got connected to Captain Eric Alexander in the Strathmore Fire Station. And interestingly, the case that had resurfaced for Dave had been one he was following for years as well. So it was like that story brought all 3 of us together, and so Hopes Cradle was able to get across the line really quickly once we met Eric. Yeah, it's like great.
Yeah, I mean, both Dave and Eric were there, I believe, at the meeting at the MP's office, and both of their testimonies were different, very different, but very inspiring because if I recall correctly, Dave, it really hit him when he was called to investigate the body of a baby who had been in a dumpster on Christmas Day. And he said he was with his family and it just kind of struck him that this is happening and that something needs to be done about it. And then conversely, Eric then taking up that cross, if you will, by implementing it at a fire station where it's never been done before. So that both are equally amazing, and I'm so happy that there are men out there who want to do something for these women along with yourself. Can you just tell us a little bit about the actual process of if a woman needs to use Hopes Cradle? Like are there specifics? Like what's the box like, and also what are the legalities surrounding dropping off your baby?
Thank you for this question. I think it's really important because I think there can be a lot of misconceptions, and so thank you for that. So essentially, it's very easy. A woman comes. There's no cameras facing the cradle, specifically to ensure complete anonymity of the mother, most likely, but anyone who is placing the baby in the cradle. And so she just opens the door. As soon as the door opens, an alarm goes off and it signals the fire dispatch and then also the ambulance as well. And she places her baby in and has about 1.5 to 2 minutes. One thing that we did do, and I'd actually like to talk about that a little bit about, we very much have a lot of sympathy for the mother and a lot of compassion for the mother. This is not just towards the babies. We really want to be as compassionate as we can on both sides of the equation. So we put in a secondary alarm specifically for the mother that the first one is not audible, but the second one is, and it's specifically to be able to give her a heads up that she has 30 seconds left before a firefighter comes. And that was just because the last thing you want to think of is a mom saying goodbye to her baby and having a firefighter open the door and then the anonymity is blown and all of it. So we did that. And then essentially she closes the door, takes an envelope, and in the envelope, it has medical resources, both for physical and mental health help. And then a letter that she can write, a guided letter, so she can send her final words to her baby. And the envelopes are all pre-addressed and postage paid to make it super easy. There's also a medical form in there too for her to be able to fill out any information about herself and then also the father. We're trying to close as many loops as possible to ensure, again, too, as the baby develops through life, that there are questions that can be answered rather than just a complete mystery on that side of things. So yeah, and then she closes the door and it's locked, and she has 30 days to be able to reclaim her baby if she wants to, or if she feels able to. And that's the big thing. And you touched on that. It's really lovely to have men champion this, and it sure is. But specifically with Dave, he has every reason as a homicide detective to have no respect for the women doing the surrendering of their baby or abandoning, I guess, in that circumstance. And yet he doesn't. He has so much compassion. And I mean, the truth of the matter is that we all should have that compassion. And the reason why we do is that statistically, many of them are trafficked victims. And the babies are leveraged to increase what the mothers do by pimps and stuff. I mean, it's horrid. And especially when you think of young women, girls even, that are in that situation. I mean, it's not a stretch to imagine them truly feeling their baby's better off not going through all of that. So there's a lot of, my point is that there's a lot of things that go into that. And we're trying to take a stand here and provide life to these babies in a safe place while protecting the mom's anonymity, because I think that that's a big reason why the unsafe abandonment happens. And you have to think too, like, these babies are full-term babies. So people, I mean, especially in today's age, it's not difficult to terminate a pregnancy, and they haven't, which is fascinating to me. And to me is the thread of hope through all of this, is that they didn't want to, could have, didn't want to. And these babies are totally savable. So that's what we're trying to be able to do. And we want Hopes Cradles everywhere. To me, this is a no-brainer resource that should be absolutely everywhere to ensure that it's completely accessible to anyone in need.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a whole movie done about this. I'm sure you've seen it, called The Drop Box, but it was mostly predominantly babies with physical or mental deformities or disabilities and things like that. And then this couple would just take them all in and care for them. And it's super inspirational and empowering that, just regular people such as this family, such as yourself, such as Dave and Eric and everyone on your board is doing something about this, because it's easy for us kind of on the sidelines to say that's absolutely tragic. Why would a mother ever do this? But we have to understand the root cause of it all. Why is this happening? What can we specifically do to not only prevent these babies from being left and abandoned, but also to help these mothers? Because women aren't just doing this for no reason. Like, they're not these callous, malicious people who are wanting their babies to die after they give birth to them. So I like Hopes Cradle in the fact that it focuses on each area. Like, it provides help to the mother. It provides her options. Like, if she comes into a different circumstance or is able to free herself or get the help from that envelope, then she can reclaim her baby. Or if she doesn't choose to do that, that baby can go to another family, and also, provides a safe haven for the baby as well. So I like that it covers all the bases, and I think that's really important.
Thank you. One of our ambassadors, actually, we have a pretty extensive ambassador team that stretches completely across Canada, and one of our ambassadors actually wrote a song called Hopes Cradle, and it's a really beautiful telling of the mother's side. It's beautiful. I'll share it. Oh, I think I shared it with you. It's lovely. And I think it's a really important thing to have compassion to both sides.
When you think about it, especially because a lot of these women, young women, girls, you even use that term, they're in these situations that get to that point where they get to a Hopes Cradle. The amount of, to put ourselves in their shoes, which of course we can never do, but to at least attempt to do that, the amount of strength, and I would even dare say tenacity, that those women have, that just motherly instinct, because there must be all kinds of pressure on them in their lives in order to have an abortion, to terminate that pregnancy. And like you said, they specifically chose not to, but at the same time they have a pretty solid inkling that maybe at this point in their lives that they can't provide what they need to provide to that child, and for them to utilize this bridge, if you will, and to get to that point, to get through all 9 months and to finally get to that point, is something else. And it's actually a shame that not every single fire hall in this country has a Hopes Cradle. Like, I'm sure, like, when you think of like how much money goes into building a fire hall, it's not that much more money to include something like that. That kind of brings me to my next question, because in meeting with members of parliament, and I don't know if you met with provincial politicians as well. I know you've spoken in the past about a couple of obstacles kind of getting in the way of getting these boxes in there, especially regarding specifically in Alberta with AHS and the fact that COVID kind of hit at that time. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe some of the legislative and regulatory obstacles that are in the way in Alberta, and I don't know if you looked at other provinces as well, to making sure that there are Hopes Cradles everywhere?
Yeah, so we have had some surprising obstacles for sure. One of which is fear of a perfect storm. That specific term keeps coming up with fire stations. So I didn't realize how brave Eric was until we tried to expand Hopes Cradle, and essentially they're terrified of a perfect storm happening where they have to leave the baby, where they're helping someone else. And there's rules here, and I think probably in most areas in Canada, if not all, where when you respond to a medical care, you cannot relinquish the patient unless you are essentially subbed out by someone with higher medical authority. So that's why we have paramedics lining in the hallways of our hospitals instead of being able to go out and respond to other calls. And it's the same situation for the firefighters. So if the paramedics were unable to come, the firefighters have to stay with whoever they have responded to. So in that event, they are afraid that if it was a hour wait, for instance, that's what they're talking about as far as a perfect storm, that they are unable to reach the baby, and they're very afraid of if something bad was to happen. But to me, 100% of the time, temperature controlled, locked, safe cradle is going to be better than a ditch or a dumpster.
Yep.
No matter what the wait time is. So it's very surmountable, which is frustrating for me. But I understand that they're scared. They're afraid of the worst case scenario happening, and I get that. But I think we have to all be brave, and we have to all step up and move forward cohesively to be able to solve this problem, because it is very solvable. That's one issue that has been coming up frequently. But the other issue too is that I want to be able to ensure that these babies are placed into adoptive homes immediately. And that's something that we're working on as well. So I want to be able to just ensure that these babies are, especially during such critical developmental months, days at that point, I want them to be able to be placed in a secure, safe, stable environment immediately, if possible. And Alissa, I think you mentioned that, yes, you did, as far as some of the babies not being like having developmental delays or having any sort of special needs. And for instance, Adoption Options is an organization we've partnered with, and they have, I think 40 or 45 or somewhere around there, parents who have been gone through specific courses and pre-screened specifically for children who need additional support and help. So they're there, and they have over 100 parents waiting as well for any form of child. So I think it is wrong for the babies to go anywhere other than into a secure, safe, stable home right away. So that's something that we're really working on as well. But the main inhibitors would be funding and making sure that the fire stations feel supported. That even if there's a perfect storm, that the community's behind them, that the government's behind them, that all of it. So that's
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more, just because if there are politicians and if they're listening to this, whether it be provincial or federal, let's talk about it from that angle, and then let's also talk about it from a community angle, because I'm sure that there'll be lots of listeners who would be desperate to help from a community standpoint. So just from a political standpoint, if there was if you had a meeting with, I believe it would be an MLA or even the next leader of the UCP, what would you need them to do specifically to get this up and running? And because I think you mentioned that between the time that a baby is dropped in the Hopes Cradle box and then put into the hands of one of these adopted families, it's 2 years. So like you said, a lot can happen in 2 years developmentally, connection-wise, attachment-wise, all of that stuff. So you want to be able to have that 30 days pass and then have the baby go right into the hands of the adoptive parents. So what needs to change politically for that to happen?
Well, interestingly, right now, politically, Hopes Cradle and the aftermath of a surrender in Hopes Cradle is in a gray area. So the default is that the baby would be placed with Children's Aid. And that's where things get clogged up, I guess, or I don't want to be offensive to anyone at Children's Aid, but it does prolong the process. Now, Cheryl, the parents that she has in the waiting have far more, they have to go through a much more rigorous process in order to be accepted as a recipient of a baby through Adoption Options than what you have to be a foster care parent. So right away, there's no argument for the baby not being placed immediately, even for that 30 days with an adoptive parent. They're just, it's much more rigorous. So they're ready. And then, the basically we need the process to be streamlined so that the baby is going into a safe place, and with the potential of it being a forever home, immediately. And so because we're in a gray area, essentially, I think we have to make it not gray.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make it a black and white situation, that this is just the ironed out process. And Hopes Cradle in general, even the surrendering and abandonment is a gray area. And we've spoken with police and spoken with RCMP and all of that, and we have complete assurance that as long as the baby hasn't been tortured or anything like that, that there will be no pursuit, no asking the community, or no, nothing like that. So, but it's gray, and we need to make it not gray from start to finish. And I need some politicians that are willing to roll up their sleeves and not just give lip service, not just, I mean, most people who aren't heartless think that this is wonderful. And even in the community, it's 99% of people are 100% for it. And the people who are not, it's more that they're sad that this is needed at all. But they're not against it. And I need some politicians that are not afraid to roll up their sleeves and stick with this until it's done.
Yeah, like this is the most non-controversial, most, one of the most pro-life things that you could possibly do as a politician. So, we can host meetings, we can talk about this till we're blue in the face, but the fact is that we need provincial politicians to actually take this on, to streamline the process, to ensure that these babies are put in loving homes, and that's it. Just let's get this done and move on. This shouldn't be complicated.
And it isn't complicated, right? But but a lot of smoke and mirrors comes into play, and that for me is incredibly frustrating.
Absolutely.
To me, it sounds like I have so much issue with politicians, which, I mean, there's always issues there, as it is with bureaucrats, which if there's issues with politicians, there are definitely always issues with bureaucrats. And, I think of my own aunt and uncle who were in the adoptive system for a public adoption. Now, this is in a different province in Alberta, mind you, but they were in that system for close to 10 years. And, they had to sit there and wait for the inspector to come by to do the questionnaire, to do the medical history and all that, for the two of them to inspect the house. They're ready to go. They're just normal, suburban lovely couple. There's not a whole lot of red flags there, let's say, but they had to wait for the process to kickstart. And even then, the son that they were able to adopt wasn't through a public adoption, it was through a private adoption. And of course, in this province, and I don't know whether it's the case in Alberta, but when you do a private adoption, which is when the biological mother decides, I want specifically this couple to adopt my child, if they're so willing and that couple says yes, then you basically go around all these loopholes. Of course, with the situation for Hopes Cradle, that wouldn't be the case. Like we were talking about earlier, it's just miraculous in and of itself that these young women can even get to the box, can even get their child to Hopes Cradle. So that's not really an option. But to me, it seems like if you have a pool, if you will, of parents ready to go in Alberta, and surely you don't have to live in Strathmore to adopt a child that comes into the box in Strathmore. You can live, in Calgary, in Edmonton, in Grand Prairie, or wherever. That doesn't seem like it would be a terribly difficult thing. So to me, it seems like a bureaucratic thing where are you having to hire more people to do these inspections? Are you having to, like Alissa saying, streamline it so you're only looking for 50 different things as opposed to 5,000 different things? But yeah, at the end of the day, it is also a political problem because you do need politicians to push through that bureaucracy and to implement, whether they're a minister of child and family services, to have ministerial directives, orders and councils, all that sort of stuff. You do have to have the political will to push against the bureaucratic will, to kind of push against all those that will come with the perfect storm. Because like you said, being a father myself, I much rather would have had my daughter sit in a temperature controlled box for a couple hours at one time, as opposed to, in a dumpster somewhere. And I'm sure that your chair, Mr. Sweet there, David Sweet, would probably agree with that. I don't know if he's still inspector, former inspector, what have you. But yeah, I don't know, Alissa, if this is being talked about at all in Alberta, if you yourself have talked to different MLAs about it, but it seems to me that you have to push through that bureaucratic stuff to either fund it properly or streamline it or kind of almost politically intervene with the bureaucracy and say, like, no, guys, listen, you need to meet these metrics. You need to find these 500 families. And if you don't, you're no longer going to be a bureaucrat.
But the thing is that the families are already found and they've already been through the process. They've been years in training. They've paid the money. Like, they're all ready to go. The problem is that they go to Children's Aid instead of, into the hands of these families. And it takes 2 years because they have to go into the foster families. And just I'm sure that this kind of, the way that it happened, the way that it's set up was good maybe for people 10, 20 years ago. But the fact is that things have changed, and we have to keep up with the times. And if this is a need, if Hopes Cradle is a need, which clearly it is, because even with Jordan's initial, talking about how they started it, that there were 3 babies within a span of how many, months, and even on Christmas Day, this is clearly a need. So they need to streamline the process to meet that need. And I have spoken to some politicians here in Alberta who are interested. And I've even, tried to get meetings with the leader, who was also very interested, but then like a leadership race happened and everything. Again, shit hit the fan. So we need
that never happens with us, Alissa.
It's just, like I want to, and this podcast is only part of it, but like as a political pro-life organization, I want to help, and I feel the frustration as well. And so we really need to put pressure on politicians, especially provincial and the leader, to ensure that this happens, because it's just so basic, and the fact that it's not happening is extremely frustrating. And I feel it just as much as you do, probably less, but I do feel it quite intensely as well, Jordan.
It should also be nonpartisan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like regardless of where you stand on, other life issues, on assisted suicide or abortion or whatever, I think we can all agree that once a child is born, or as you said, Jordan, full term, that we should be doing everything we possibly can, both in terms of the community, in terms of the provincial crown, to making sure that these babies that are now born have every opportunity to have the best life possible. And like you're mentioning, Jordan, like that kind of final communication with those mothers, that at least there's some sort of resource, reach out to them to get them to maybe onto a bit of a different track, or help them try to get on the track they're already trying to get on. I don't know whether you vote UCP or you vote NDP or you vote Liberal, you vote Conservative, whatever. I think that's something that would be quite unifying. It would be great to see that in the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, both someone like a Travis Taves and a Rachel Notley support an initiative like this.
I completely agree with you. And Scott, you hit on a interesting point there, as far as I think it was your aunt and uncle that were waiting for adoption, and then the private adoption. So I think the biggest shift that has to happen is that the decision to place your baby in Hopes Cradle has to be, in my opinion, looked at the same way as a woman who is choosing to go via a private adoption. Her decision is respected immediately, and the process follows after that. I had a rather troubling conversation, and I told Alissa about this with one of the leaders within Alberta Children's Aid. And her mandate was that they would want to do everything they possibly could to find the mother, and then if the mother refused to take the baby back, that they would try to make one of the family members take the baby. And I was mortified hearing that. And the reason I was mortified is that, for the exact reason that I told you earlier in this podcast, that these women are not just women that woke up one day and decided, like, I have a beautiful, healthy family, so many people that would want my baby, but I'm going to do this instead. That is not the situation we're dealing with. And chasing up after the mother puts her in danger. It puts the baby in danger. This decision has been made for reasons. And the violation of the mother's choice here is putting the whole house of cards in jeopardy. And she has chosen, by surrendering safely, she has chosen what she feels is the best option. And just like in a private adoption, to me, like, in a private adoption, it's 100% respected. It must be the same here. It puts everyone in danger.
You still have the 30-day rule, which is reasonable, and I think most provinces have that. Like, when my cousin was adopted, there was a 30-day rule there where, the mother was able to make that decision and reevaluate and whatnot. And I don't think anyone would argue against that. But I agree with you. Like, the decision's already been made. And I'm curious as to, and I don't know how many babies have been through Hopes Cradle boxes, but I am curious as to, kind of the average age for a lot of them that are coming through. Is it, within the first couple of weeks? Is it within, the first month or the first day? And I'd imagine earlier rather than later. But the fact of the matter is that, like you said, they made that specific decision to go to Hopes Cradle and not go to right into the system with Children's Aid, B, like in an abortion, and C, with family members or friends or people in their immediate circle, because I think that's where most mothers would go if, they wanted to make that sort of decision.
Yeah. So I can't be specific about Hopes Cradle because of exactly what we're talking about, the safety for the mother and anonymity and all of that, because we don't have enough cradles yet to be able to speak about because there's one location. So it's pretty specific. But what I can tell you is that the babies that are found are pretty much newborn.
Yeah,
full term newborn.
Yeah.
Well, when we come back, we'll talk more about the installation of these boxes, how much it costs, and what you can do as a member of Alberta Society to help. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We live in a world that grows through communication.
Every connection comes from a dream to be heard and realized.
To welcome a better future. What are your dreams?
LaRosse Media will help communicate your vision through our professional video production services and marketing strategies.
Start building connections to your future audience. Visit larossemedia.com
and be sure to check out our extended service options.
Dream, produce, market, succeed with LaRosse Media.
Serving Canada from coast to coast to coast.
And we're back with Jordan Guildford. She is the founder of Gems for Gems and also taking on the Hopes Cradle initiative to provide women in desperate situations a safe haven to drop their babies off at a fire station so that they can be looked after and hopefully adopted by a loving family. So we talked about the legislative initiatives that need to be done in order to streamline this process. But let's actually talk about the practicality of implementing and installing a drop box in a fire station. So how much does that cost, first of all?
So each location can be completely constructed for $20,000. And that's everything from alarm systems to the actual cradle itself, to the door, locks, everything. So it's to me, as far as when you look at resources, and Captain Eric Alexander speaks about this fairly frequently, the amount of money that gets poured into even the fire station alone, this is nothing. And it is nothing. It's very doable when you look at the funding available. And that's honestly the biggest goal. We've currently to date been relying on the community to be able to support it. But times are tough right now. And, people are doing everything they can to be able to support this, but they don't have a lot of extra money around, period. There's even more talk about food insecurity now. And I know the United Way just put out something that 30% of Albertans are don't have food security. I think Pierre Poilievre just said 50% of Canadians. Like, we need larger help. And I think that would be an incredible bless to all of our communities to be able to have this resource there.
So would the fire stations have to set aside $20,000, or is it up to the community to fundraise it and then say, here you go, here's 20,000, will you please do this? Or
it's
is it
up
both?
To the community. At the moment, it's up to the community. Strathmore firefighters did pitch in, which was awesome. But it doesn't have to come down to that. It can be either or, but it does, the community, be it whether they partner with their fire station or not, is responsible for raising the funds. Sometimes we get people contacting us and wanting to contribute specifically to Hopes Cradle. So we have some, but we want to be able to use that for communities that can't fundraise it. So it's tricky, and it would be wonderful to be able to just have an agreement, a contract, whatever that we can. I mean, we want these completely across Canada, everywhere. Because to me, that's what's right. Yeah.
I mean, $20,000 is not a lot. Like, I go to church every Sunday. They're always fundraising for something, like a new roof, whatever, this project, that project. You could literally go and ask a priest or a pastor or someone from a Christian or a Catholic church and ask them, can you fundraise $20,000 for a Hopes Cradle box for this fire station? And they could do that easily, one mass, one weekend. So, I mean, think of the hundreds and hundreds of churches across Alberta. All you need are, like, I don't know how many fire stations there are in Alberta, or in Calgary,
I was actually just looking this up because I was like, okay, well, what would this cost be? And these are more or less one-time costs. I'm sure there's some maintenance that you have to do,
but very, very low.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be $20,000 a year. I doubt it would even be $1,000 a year.
$25 a month for their security package. That's it.
So I was looking that up just now, Alissa. There's 30 fire stations in the city of Edmonton, 42 in Calgary. So, usually we say about a third of the population's in Edmonton, a third in Calgary, and a third for the rest of the province. So let's say there's like 120 to 150 stations, maybe even 200. You're talking well under $5 million to install a Hopes Cradle at every single location right across Alberta. I'm not usually one, for those who know me, to say, oh, let's spend more taxpayer money, but we spend so much money on so many dumb things. I'm sure that we could not fund some crazy stuff that most parents disagree with that are being funded in schools, and fund this instead. So it's not a huge cost to any provincial treasury, frankly, whether it be, a province that's flush of cash, like the province of Alberta, or, provinces that are struggling a little bit more, maybe a little more out east. Like it's very, very doable. And, your experience with Jordan, that there are people in the community, and that's fantastic, including the fire station itself, that will step up to donate to this, to help fund it. So it doesn't just have to be provincial crowns that fund it, but if it were just provincial crowns funding it, like, it's very low cost, all things considered.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's permanent, right? This is not something that is an ongoing thing that they have to worry about it at all. It's once it's done, and it's so doable.
First and foremost, it could easily be funded by the Crown. And if for whatever reason they're not going to do it, which they should, then, Susie Joe at St. Bernard's Parish could go to her priest and be like, can we fundraise for this one weekend? There, 20 grand. There's a baby box. Then somebody, like, we can do this as a community, because in my experience, it would be way more difficult as someone who fundraises all the time. It'd be way more difficult for you, Jordan, or your board to, like, constantly try and get, like, individual donations all the time for this. It would be easier for just a parish to take this on, or a church to take this on, and you could get that, and then you could focus on actually getting the fire stations to then implement it and not have to worry about the funding of it. And I think that's how the community can work together with you in a very easy and attainable way.
That would be such a gift, to be honest. I'm very occupied with all of the elements in this, and it's very frustrating. And the other thing too is that having the fundraising done like that shows the community's fire stations the support there. Yes. So it will encourage them and embolden them, knowing that their community is 100% behind them. So that would be massive.
Yeah, there's actually a cool program in the province of Manitoba that the provincial government was doing there, granted under Pallister. I don't know if they're still doing it under Heather Stephenson or not, where they have these things called, and I know they have the same in Saskatchewan, they're called social bonds, where basically you can donate money to a social cause, and if that cause, and it's a charitable cause, and meets its metrics, then the government will basically do match funding. And I don't know if they have this in Alberta yet or not. But if it's something that they are going to bring in Alberta, this is like a perfect project for that. Or if your organization were to expand beyond Alberta, especially into Manitoba, Saskatchewan, this is an absolute perfect project to meet that. Now, it's my understanding that you do have some help from those in the communities, and visiting your website, it looks like you have some ambassadors and some celebrity ambassadors. And I guess my question to you is, like, how did this come about to get these people on board, and has that made a difference? And if it's made a difference, what kind of difference has it made for Gems for Gems?
It is, the ambassadors are the heartbeat of Gems for Gems. They are what makes everything possible. It came about because our jewelry drive is as unifying as Hopes Cradle is in the community. It makes everyone who donates even a small bracelet or a ring a donor to what we're trying to be able to achieve, which creates more interest in gems. And from that interest, some people have wanted to join our team as ambassadors. And we have over 150 across Canada. We have some celebrity ambassadors, and the celebrity ambassadors have come from all different unique ways. But it's been a game changer, yes, but it's also the whole reason why we're able to do everything that we are. And these are people, men and women from the community, that are rolling up their sleeves and are just there with whatever we need to be able to have accomplished. They just do it, and it's incredible. But again, too, I mean, times have been difficult, and it's not every single one of them are donors, but donors in all kinds of different ways. Some of them will do fundraisers, some of them, and it's to a greater or lesser extent financially, but everyone gives in the ways that they can give. It has been 100% why we can do everything that we have. The scholarship program, our Thrive program, everything is because of these people giving their time and their energy to Gems. I have so much admiration and gratitude for them.
Well, I saw on your website that there's an evening coming up with Detective Sweet about his stories as a homicide detective. So I will be buying tickets to that because I'm totally into true crime.
Good. Yeah, that's a perfect example too. I mean, Dave gives a lot to Gems, but he's doing this. He's using his skills and his expertise to be able to do a Halloween fundraiser for us. And tickets are flying, and they should be flying. He's fantastic. He's done a similar talk before for YouthLink, and he's added a lot of material, and he's excited. We're excited, and yeah, I encourage anybody to buy tickets to it while they last, because they are selling fast.
Well, speaking of that, where can people find you? What's your website? What's your social media? If people want to reach out to you to bring this into their church or to donate or anything, how can people contact you and find out more about this?
So it's www.gemsforgems.com. So that's our website, and then just Gems for Gems on Facebook, and it's Gems for Gems Canada on Instagram. And there's donate buttons all over the place. So that's never going to be a problem. But and then as far as our events, we always post them on our Facebook and Instagram, but also on Eventbrite. So that's where you can find the Dave Suite, and it's an evening with Detective Suite is what this one's called. Awesome. But it will be really fun.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll do our top 10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I thought you were asking me.
We'll be right back.
Nature communicates with us in a universal language. The sunrise starts a new day. The sunset marks our accomplishments.
The most beautiful communication is where the speaker and the listener match perfectly and understand the same message.
Your future audience is waiting to hear from you. What message do you need to share?
At LaRosse Media, we fashion beautiful communications through our professional video production services and marketing strategies.
Create your own most beautiful message. Visit larosmedia.com and be sure to check out our extended service options.
Dream, produce, market, succeed with LaRosse Media.
Serving Canada from coast to coast to coast.
And we're back, and we're here with Jordan Guildford from Gems for Gems. We just had a great discussion regarding the Hopes Cradle and everything that you're doing with your organization. So, Jordan, like we said before the break, what we like to do, especially with our newer guests, is to have a rapid-fire top 10 questions. So they're going to come at you from every which direction. They're about all kinds of topics. So, why don't we get started here? So, the first one we like to ask you is, how did you meet your husband?
I was 18 and I was selling boat tickets on the waterfront in Halifax, and he was pulling rickshaws. And it was a super rainy summer. So I had very few people to sell boat tickets to, and he had very few people to pull around in rickshaws. So we all just kind of hung out, and then we did 3 years long distance after that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's been ever since 18.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a true Canadian romance right there.
Isn't it? Yeah, especially maritime romance.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of maritimes, what is your favorite type of endangered species from Scott's Bay, Nova Scotia, which is where you're from? The barn swallow, the ram's head lady slipper, or the Canada warbler? Do you know what any of those are?
I do.
Okay.
And I got to say the lady slippers, because they're quite pretty. They're really little and pretty, and we used to collect them.
Okay. Yeah.
What is your most touching or inspiring story of your success that you've encountered with a client at Gems for Gems?
We have a lot of really lovely ones. Do I have time for 2 quick ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. First one is one of our scholarship recipients in particular has gone way above and beyond. She joined our ambassador team as well. She all of our graduates have now become independent business owners, which is huge. Like
That's massive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. But she gives a percentage of every single one of her services. And she speaks everywhere, all over social media, about her constant gratitude to Gems for Gems for this, for the gift. But she took it full on, and it has changed everything for her and her family. The other one is actually involving Dave. He was working in his office, and he has a jewelry, like a treasure chest on his desk, in his office for people to be able to drop off jewelry there. And this woman walked by his office, and apparently she was pretty beaten up, and he saw her looking in, and then she left and she came back, and she knocked on the door and asked if she could come in, and he was like, yeah, come in and sit down. She had her jaw broken, had a black eye. She was in horrible shape, and she apologized for how she looked. So that she went to the Bay and tried to get them to do her makeup so that she could come to him more presentable, and they refused, which sad. Sad. But she gave her only little treasure, which was a gold bracelet, and put it in the cradle, or put it in the box that Dave had there. And she just said that she hopes it goes to someone who will be reminded that they matter. Which was just beautiful. Like, she was homeless, and she was literally all she had, and she had clearly gone through something really horrific recently, and all she was thinking about was other people. So that was beautiful. Yeah.
If that lady can do it, then we all can do it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with any inspiring woman, either dead or alive, who would it be?
I'm actually there's several, but I would really love to be able to have a sit down with Michelle Obama. I find her very brave and willing to say things that I don't agree with everything that she says or whatever, but I find her very brave and very willing to go against the grain. And I know from even just what I do, how much tenacity that can take. And I'd love to sit down with her and kind of find out where her fire comes from.
I bet you that's the same for you, Alissa. Yeah, between that or Hillary Clinton.
No comment.
Now you're like a good chunk of Calgarians in that you're not actually from Calgary. So what is your favorite part about living in Calgary?
There's so many, but I have to say, hands down, we have horses, and I find it spectacular that you can be fully immersed in a downtown experience and 30 minutes or 25 later, fully in the country. And I just think that's amazing. I also think it's amazing that people wear cowboy hats freaking everywhere. It is so unique. I'm fascinated by it, and I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Toronto before this for 10 years, and so I came here, which, you know, it's millions of people as well, but it does not feel anything like Toronto. It's got that small town feel, which I absolutely love, and the people are 1,000 times nicer than in Toronto.
Yeah, there's so much warmth here, which I absolutely love. Yeah, and community feel in a large city too, which is just awesome. But yeah, the fact that it's two totally different existences, minutes from each other is spectacular.
For
awesome.
sure.
One quick thing about that before we move on, because I just have to share the story. So my wife is from Etobicoke, like she's from the GTA, basically the heart of the GTA.
I was born there.
Etobicoke.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So really, you're like Alissa, my wife. You're actually from Ontario then.
Yeah.
A lot of Albertan people are.
Yeah. Well, look at Anyway, so we went to visit Alissa and her husband a couple years ago, and we went to the Calgary Stampede, and like I kind of told her, like, Western Canada is just, it's just different. It obviously is similar to Eastern Canada, but there's a different vibe about it. There's a different feel. There's a get her done kind of an attitude. And she was like, okay, whatever. And then, so it was her first time being in Alberta. We were traveled all around, and then we come back down, we go to the Stampede. And then we went to the night show. And for those who've never been to the night show for the Stampede, they have fireworks and entertainment and all kinds of stuff. And for us that year, they had like this song that they made up, and it's kids from all across Alberta, and it's going on for 20 minutes, and they're literally singing for like 20 minutes straight, We Love Alberta, with like giant screens of like scenes of Alberta in the background. And then my wife just turned to me and says, I get it. Like, I get it, I understand it, and she just ate it up. So
she joined the kids troop the next year.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Jordan, what is your favorite thing about Nova Scotia?
The shoreline. Literally every single bit of the shoreline. It's such raw, non-manufactured beauty, and that might sound like a really silly way of putting it, but I find, especially in today's world, it's there's such a huge push to be able to make everything better and prettier and this and that, and the shoreline is just so nature at its absolute finest.
That must be hard for you living in a landlocked province now then.
It is, but then you get kind of that from the mountains too, right? Totally different, but you still get that feeling of being tiny and being like almost nothingness in comparison to this beautiful big forest. And I think it's really cool.
This is the big advice for me. How did you get your kids to eat vegetables as toddlers?
You're gonna sound like an old mother. I just didn't give them anything else, which is so bad.
Oh, like, that's what you do. Okay.
It was just very like, this is what we're eating, period. So they didn't have any other option.
That's actually not the case for me. My daughter, she loves vegetables. If you have a plate of food in front of her, she always goes for broccoli first and won't touch.
Yes, but your kid is not a toddler. When my daughter was a baby, she ate everything. Then they become toddlers, and they say cookies, cake, candy, and then you put something in front of them, and they say no.
So we were a bit crazy strict on that side. Just well, mostly because I had two babies back to back. Yeah, so I had to run a tight ship, or I was
babies
constantly
eat amazing.
Yeah, but then the toddler side, I can't.
The toddlers are
running in different directions. Like they're 11 months apart, so that was craziness.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Mine are 20 months apart. Or are they? No, 8. I don't even 18 or 20. Again, mom brain fog, but I thought that was a lot. So
Yeah, but 18 civilized still.
yeah, that's true. It
11
doesn't
is
seem
not
like
civilized.
it. Yeah. All right. Have you ever been kicked in the face by a horse?
No, I've had some spectacular bails, but never being anything. I probably wouldn't be here if I was.
Goodness. Yeah, I guess.
Oysters, yay or nay?
Oh, heck yes. I almost said the 2 L's one. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to. But
You can say whatever the hell you want on here.
Okay, hell yeah. And as many of them as possible to an obscene level.
Okay.
My husband, being Nova Scotian, he used to buy boxes of them.
Yep.
And he'd shuck them himself because that was the way to be able to do it, feed his wife an obscene amount while not breaking the bank. And I literally put them back as quickly as he'd shuck them. So
Do you add like a little bit of lemon? Do you add a little bit of sauce, or just straight with the brine?
So brine is important, but just actually we used to do just a little bit of Frank's.
Okay.
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom. Boom.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've seen freshly shaved horseradish.
Yeah, I mean, when you go to restaurants, they do it like so lovely, but at home, getting her done, a little bit of Frank's.
We had
and a martini too, right?
That
of
would be
course.
nice.
Yeah. We had a hospitality suite at the Conservative Convention when it was in Halifax, and our hospitality suite was pretty packed, of course, because of our organization, but also because we had an oyster bar. We knew it was important.
That was the
in Nova
key.
Scotia. Yeah. Okay, last question. If you were going to live on a desert island but could only take one thing with you, what would it be?
Like, we can't include family or anything.
Like you and your fam are going.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, because I don't want to sound
Pick one of your
heartless with my
kids.
family.
Yeah. Jordan's choice. Here we are.
I would say matches.
Okay, so you're like a practical girl. You're like,
Oh yeah,
warmth,
I used to do
food.
competitions, and this is so nerdy, but I used to compete for woodsman competitions.
Oh,
so if I
man.
just have some matches, I'm good.
So next time I go hiking, I know who to bring.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's super nerdy, but yeah.
No, that's badass.
It's kind of the opposite of nerdy,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for multiple things, for coming on our podcast, but also for all the work that you do. I hope that this podcast is an opportunity for more people to hear your message, to help your cause, to hopefully streamline the political process and get this done, so that more babies can be saved through the Hopes Cradle and more women can be helped through Gems for Gems. So we really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be asked, and I'm so grateful. Thank you very, very much.
You're so welcome, and everyone should go check out Gems for Gems. All right, well, we'll see you next week, everybody. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, the stinkingalbatross.ca. Our new episodes come out every Friday, so we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye for now.